Rich, you have 5 board members. You are good to go.
Okay. And why don't we call the meeting to order? Is there just one page of people? 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes. 21 participants.
Okay. Peter, give me a thumbs up. Can you hear okay? Okay. We're going to make sure from now on that you have the motion before it's seconded, written correctly. And I'll give you some time, and then just give me a thumbs up when you have it, okay? And then I'll know that we can move on.
Well, thank you.
Okay. I talked to everybody. I called it to order. I talked to Matt beforehand. Where's Matt? Matt over there. Oh, new house, new background, Matt, huh? So one of the things that I was told, folks, and especially everybody in the audience or listening in, so if you're muted and you're off camera, then you don't show up. I can't see you in the little boxes that I see. And if you want to say something, if you can unmute your, put yourself on video, and then you come to the 4 screen. Last meeting I was having, because we had like 3 or 4 pages of people, I kept trying to look through to make sure everybody who wanted to talk was being recognized. So if you can just, if you want to say something, just turn your camera on, and then that brings you up to the front page. And also, if you send Matt a message or send the message to all, Matt is going to act as my my video cohort, and he's going to be watching for people that have questions or want to ask a question, so I can recognize them. So we're good with that, Matt? Did I get that right? Okay. And Rich, are you all good videotaping us and ready to rock and roll? Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then the only other thing is, why can't I see the chat screen? I don't know. So anyways, the first thing we have is, I want to talk also real quick about roll call votes. So so Bill got some clarification from us after Mark commented. One meeting or a few meetings ago, maybe I think it was a Wyndham Central meeting. If it's a unanimous vote, if everybody's in agreement, then we don't need a roll call vote. If anybody either abstains or votes opposite, then we do need a roll call vote. And Peter, those have to be recorded. Who voted aye, who voted nay, and who abstained, not just that there was 4 ayes and 2 nays. So we just got to make sure we do that in the future too. Okay. Do I have any additions or deletions to the agenda, folks? Bill just sent out an updated one this morning. Does everybody have that one? It's basically under next meeting, and it adds September 21st board hearing in executive session at 5 p.m. Did everybody get that? That's the only change on that, correct, Bill? Okay.
Rich,
yes, Mark.
I just want to give a quick VSBA update on some dates.
Okay, why don't we do that under new business then, Mark, on the bottom?
Sounds good.
Rick, did you have something, or are you just moving your, no, you're all set. Anybody else with an update? I know I saw Laura somewhere, now she's gone. Oh, she's there. Laura, turn your camera on. Maybe not. Okay, members of the public, I got a few of you that have your lights on or your cameras on. Did you guys have anything you want to say, or just like to be seen? Public's all set, I take it? Hi, Laura. Okay, I'm going to move on to review and approve some minutes. We're going to do these one at a time because there are comments on one of them. So the first one is the August 21st meeting, which was our emergency meeting. And this is where we approved the purchase of the the air machines, what were they called? Air purifiers for both buildings. Can I get somebody to make a motion to approve those minutes of the August 21st meeting?
So moved. It's Mark.
Okay, I'll recognize Mark, and Mark moved to accept the 21st minutes. So I have a second to that.
A second.
Okay, I'll recognize Dwight as the person who made the second. Peter, you good? Okay. Are you ready to vote? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Laura, you good?
Not hear me say aye?
No, I'm sorry. I was watching little yellow boxes come in. So it sounds like it's a unanimous vote, Peter. It is a unanimous vote. So we will move on to the minutes of the August 31st, 2020 meeting. Can somebody please make a motion to approve those? And then we've got I do have something to talk about with them before we approve them. So if somebody would move that onto the floor for me.
So moved.
Okay, so the board chair will recognize Mark moving to approve the minutes of the August 31st, 2020 meeting. Do I have somebody second that?
Second.
Okay, chair will recognize Laura motioning to second the approval. Any discussion on this?
Yeah, Rich.
Go ahead, Mark, you get first shot.
All right. On the last paragraph of the second page, there, we had a discussion about whether the staff, the Dover staff, was aware of the purchase of the air filters. And I think that that last paragraph seemed to have possibly just merged a couple of topics. My recollection is that there was a parent who asked whether the board, whether the staff knew but that the board had approved the air filtration prior to sending their support letter, or sending their letter in support of starting in full remote mode. And Lori O'Hearn responded that they knew that we were going to discuss it, but that the letter went out before we actually had that meeting.
Okay, so you want to just correct it that, tell us how you want the correction made so Peter can add it.
How do I want the correction made? I guess that last paragraph of the second page needs to read that a parent asked whether the staff knew that the board had approved the air filtration prior to sending their letter in support of starting in full remote mode. And Lori O'Hearn responded that the staff knew it was a topic we were going to discuss, but the letter was sent before we had the emergency meeting.
Peter, did you get that?
I believe so, and I do remember that.
Okay, so can you read that back, what you got?
Well, the gist of it was a parent asked whether the staff knew the board had approved the air filter purchase prior to sending their letter. Prior to sending their letter, prior to voting to start. No, I got confused right there. Then it
Okay.
says
Prior to sending the letter in support of starting in full remote mode.
uh-huh.
Mark, is that what you said?
Yep, that's correct.
And she
Okay.
responded that they knew it was to be discussed, but the letter had gone out before the emergency meeting.
But that the knowledge of the equipment being ordered did not alter the sentiment. Is that okay? Mark?
I'll add that too.
Yes.
Yeah, I left that off, but I meant to say that. So you're correct, Rich.
Okay, and then Lori, I think she gave me a thumbs up, and she's on, we're seeing Lori, so is that okay, Lori? Do you want to make a comment?
No, that's fine. I was just going to say that was the rest of it was about the sentiment. So that's great.
Okay. I can see if a bear tries to attack you, I'll let you know ahead of time. If I see it in your back window.
Awesome.
Okay. So Mark made a motion, and Laura, you seconded it to approve the minutes. Mark would like to just add what was just discussed, that sentence. Would somebody like to amend the motion to that effect? So I just need somebody to make that motion to amend it to what we just discussed.
I move to amend as discussed.
Okay. So Laura, the chair recognizes Laura, and she made a motion to amend the minutes as discussed. Peter, read it back one more time so we all have it right.
A parent asks whether the staff knew the board had approved the air filter purchase prior to sending their letter in support of starting in full remote mode. Ms. O'Hearn noted that it had been known that it was to be discussed, but the letter went out before the emergency meeting. The knowledge did not alter the sentiment.
Okay. Do I have a second? Yes, that's good.
I'll English that up a little bit.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
I'll second that.
Okay, so the chair will recognize Mark, who seconds the amendment. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? And Laura, you get first dibs because you made the motion. No, Mark? Okay, if there's no discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 I believe that's unanimous. Is there anybody disagree? Unanimous. So the amendment, so the main motion now is to approve the minutes of the August 31st meeting with the correction that Peter's read to us a couple times. You guys all set to vote on the main motion?
Yes.
Nothing going on for chat world? Cool. You guys are ready to vote? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Believe that's unanimous also. The vote's unanimous, so we've approved those 2 minutes. So we're all caught up on minutes, guys. Good job. I have no correspondence. Bill, Matt, or Tammy, did I miss something? Okay. Moving right into old business. Ventilation system update. Bill, are you doing that?
Yeah. Wardsboro, and Tammy, you can correct me anytime you want. Wardsboro got visited last Wednesday, and I think there's another day that they're going to be visited. Right? They did the first half of a 2-day visit. Is that correct?
They'll be back this Wednesday to finish up. I think they have a couple more rooms to check.
So, okay. So Wardsboro got visited last Wednesday. They're getting visited this Wednesday, and we will get a report. Hopefully, we might even get it next Monday before your next meeting about those visits, and I'll update the board. But I mean, just as a reminder, they went in to do all the servicing, and then they will do their airflow checking. So those are the 2 things that are happening that we will get a report on. Dover, I had a meeting today with Mr. Medina and Alliance Mechanical. Dover is a different animal because they have a different system. All you really smart people that work with systems will know way more than me, but the essence is they have ordered the parts for the ERV, which are 10 weeks out, and they are going to be on site at the beginning of October. And they are going to do their best to work with the principal, Mr. Martin, so that they can go into 2 to 3 rooms per day and be able to move the kids so that we don't have to go fully remote. So over the next couple of weeks, we will be sent a kind of a deployment strategy, and we will coordinate with Matt to figure out how to do the rooms in chunks. So that work will begin at the beginning of October. The ERV got ordered. Well, I gave permission to order it today. And those two will be parallel. So one will be fixing the 13 air ventilator things. At the same time, they're doing the preventative maintenance, the servicing, and then the ERV will be coming in 10 weeks. And we can't test the air ventilation at Dover until we do the work, because there's no air to be measured until the work gets done. Whereas at Wardsboro, in a different system, we will be able to do the servicing and then get a measure. So basically, Wardsboro got visited Wednesday. They're getting visited again this next Wednesday, and hopefully on Monday we'll have a report, see where they stand. Dover, their long-term investment in ERV has been ordered, and the Alliance Mechanical will be on site the first week of October. And they're going to coordinate with the principal to have the least amount of disruption into the school setting.
And is thing a technical term, or is it thingy?
You're being very kind. I appreciate that. I get lost in all the very technical details. There's 13 things that run the Dover system, and those 13 mechanical systems need to be serviced so that it can move forward.
Cool.
Luckily, Mr. Medina will be here next Monday, so you guys can get a much deeper dive into where you're at. But for an update, that's what you got for tonight.
Thank you. Is there any questions for Bill from the board?
Just to help fill out, I believe those are PTAC units, PTACs.
Thank you. I appreciate all the help I can get.
Laura, go ahead.
So I heard you say that we can't test the ventilation. We can't test until we have the part come in for the ventilation. What, and you may not be able to answer this, Bill, and that's okay if we could come back on Monday with this. What are we testing?
You're testing the fresh air that is coming in through the system.
Through the system?
Yes,
I see.
not
Okay.
the fresh
Not
air that's
in
coming
through the
in
building.
naturally or through windows. Or
It's through the system.
so Tammy might be able to talk about this, but they put these like catchers in front of the airflow to measure.
Yeah, I witnessed a little bit of it. Basically, they had these big, it almost looked like a hamper that they put up. Ours were on the ceiling. Some might have them in the walls. And they put them up and they were reading off numbers based on the airflow that was coming into the building. And then I guess there's some sort of measurement that they measure it against.
You take
and
that,
that's
you
what we have to
calculate it
report
by
on.
a human body and does all this. It's a pretty
Okay.
extensive report.
Okay, and then, and I'm sorry, Bill, I know you were talking about working with Matt on a plan, having the contractor working with Matt on a plan to kind of move bodies around for least disruption. Are we still, I shouldn't say still, do we have in our toolkit other spaces that, or not, that we might need other spaces, or is that not something that we're considering at this
I mean,
point?
I won't speak for Matt, but knowing the size of the Dover building, I think that if we have a plan where we have 2 classrooms that are going to be worked on Monday, we can prepare for that in advance, as long as we know the schedule of what's going on with the work.
Okay, and next week so when might we have the ability to better understand what that schedule is looking like for you all? Will it
Probably
be
at the end of
sometime?
September.
End of September?
Realistically, the end of September.
Okay. I feel like that would be important to me to just understand the reasonableness or lack thereof of that schedule for you all. So,
Yeah, basically, I'm putting Matt in touch with Alliance Mechanical. They're going to say, look, this is what we want to accomplish. Matt's going to say that's doable or not doable. And then he'll let me know, and then I'll be the guy to communicate.
Are there any other questions? Matt, I don't know if at one point, did you want to say something, or you're all good? Just thumbs up if you're good. Okay. You guys all good with that? Go ahead, Dwight.
Yeah, a quick question. So they, you said Wardsboro, they had someone in last Wednesday and someone coming in this Wednesday. Has any work been done, or are they just reviewing the system at this point? And if
No,
they've
they're-
done work, when will they be able to test?
They're doing the servicing work, and then they're testing. So
So
they do it right. They go back to back. They do the servicing work, and then they test it. They just need to complete that cycle. That's why they're coming back on Wednesday.
Do you think they'll be done with the service on this Wednesday, or there'll be some
Yes.
more? Oh, great.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I think that's why I'm hopeful that we might get a report on the Wardsboro building by next Monday.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah,
Thanks.
Dwight, they just couldn't finish in the amount of time that they were given. I think there's maybe 2 or 3 rooms that they have to complete.
No, I think that's great. No, that's good news.
They've been very efficient.
Okay. Thank you.
Rich, I think Mark has a question.
Go ahead, Mark.
For Wardsboro, I'm assuming that the servicing, the PM that they're doing now does not include repairs, upgrading, or replacing of their ERV/HRV.
No, these are minor things, you know, if they can replace a fan belt, but it's not like the entire apparatus. So part of the report will be,
Okay.
we need these things fixed or replaced. It's just the servicing was done in these two Wednesdays.
Okay, I was just checking. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, if there's any other questions? I don't see anything, so I'm gonna move right forward to Executive Committee Weekly Meeting Update. Bill, you got the floor again.
So every Wednesday at 9 a.m., the chairs of each of the boards that make up the Wyndham Central Supervisory Union meet with me, and I give them an update on all the HVAC work that's being done across all the buildings, so everybody understands what's going on in all the other buildings. They each give each other an update on what's going on in their boards. I give them an update on what's going on in the opening and what we're learning from each individual building, whether it is protocols that work really well, or how are we checking in, or how do we use the drive-through model to be more efficient. And we also work on things that might be necessary to work with our union association in terms of having some memorandums of understanding that go outside of the contract that might be necessary as we navigate this pandemic. So this last Wednesday, we did that update. The Wardsboro building is similar to all the other buildings. They're getting visited by the technicians. They all have very similar systems, and they are getting reports. And then they are, as Mark pointed out, then they're ordering the new parts and the bigger things that need to be repaired as they move forward on those HVAC systems. And then also the executive committee can act to engage the WCSU meeting, which Mark will talk about a little bit later about the Vermont School Boards Association. But basically we meet each week just to make sure that everybody in the WCSU is on board and the board chairs are sharing information amongst themselves.
Everybody good? Any questions or comments or thoughts? We've actually had real good turnout too at them, so that's been very positive. Matt, you were up next. You have you're gonna give us a food service update.
Sure. Well, we've been serving about 30 to 40 meals to Dover students in school, 5 to 15 meals to our remote families every day. I think, Tammy, maybe 15 to 25 in Wardsboro. And we've just had a request from the high school to cover some of their remote learners who are Dover families as well. It was declared that meals are free for the rest of the calendar year through December 31st as part of the extended summer meals program. So we're not moving any money around, which is great. Makes everything a lot simpler, a lot easier to not have to track all the money down. I'll let Tammy talk a little bit about Wardsboro in terms of how it's going. I think the new staff member there is fitting in nicely, and I think they're working through some of the glitches and some of the details to try to optimize and make that more efficient. What we're finding in Dover is it's taken our chef and staff more time to prep, just because all the meals are served in the rooms now. So there's breakfast, snack, and lunch. So those all have to be delivered now to the 8 classrooms and then picked up and bussed. And so it's just a lot more management. Normally we would use, for lack of a better word, child labor. They would come and take their own tray and they would sit down and eat it, and they would remove their own tray and they would take care of the trash and the compost. But we don't have the luxury of that in this model. It's just taking a little more time to get used to. Then the last thing is just with all the details, we haven't gone electronic on our food service system. It's something we've been talking about, but the having to serve the meals in the classrooms and all the remotes and the addition of the added meals, we'd like to really be looking at some kind of electronic meal solution that will allow families to sign up electronically, maybe even eventually move money electronically, but just a system that we can get orders to the chef quicker. So by 8:30 we know counts and we can, produce the food a little bit more efficiently. But I'd love to hear from Tammy how it's working out for Wardsboro with the new model.
Yeah, so really Matt and his crew are doing sort of all of the behind the scenes work, I'd like to say, with all the preparation and whatnot. And I know it's time consuming because everything's coming in one container, including condiments, silverware, and everything. And I can really appreciate the time that takes his crew for doing all of that. We have about 20 students on a daily basis participating in lunch and only just a handful for breakfast. I think things are running smoothly. We're figuring things out as we go along. We too are not eating in the multi-purpose room or a cafeteria, so meals are getting distributed to the classrooms. So we have been using Alicia to help out with that, which has been incredibly helpful. And I think, for the most part, things are going really well. We're figuring it out as we go along, and we really appreciate the service.
Is there any questions for Matt or Tammy? We're all good, Matt? Nothing coming across? Okay. Matt, you did say earlier that you've got to try to figure out something to make it warmer when you get it over there. I got thinking we should buy one of them little domino cars.
The one with the stove, the oven built right into the car. I like it.
So, yeah. Gosh, connection's unstable. So I guess we got to start moving along. Transportation update, Matt and Tammy.
My update can be just really quick. We've got about 8 to 12 students riding the bus either to or from school. That number has stayed pretty consistent since the first day. They're doing the temperature checks in addition to asking some health questions. And the bus is pretty much on time where we thought it was going to be. We thought that we might get held up with the health checks, but they're here like 8:15, which has been really great to have all of the kids here on time and ready to go.
Matt, you all set?
Yeah, just similar. The morning run is going really well with the health checks and the screenings. The bus stops are locations where the bus can pull off the road and meet families. So families are waiting with the children in case there are any issues with the health screening and kids need to be sent home from that point. Once again, our food service person that we've hired is also doing our health screening in the morning. So trying to make that into one position for efficiency. That's working out really well. So, Lori put out a secondary survey about the mover last week. So there was some pretty interesting data I thought I'd share with you tonight. She received 26 responses. 8 of the families said they would use the mover and 18 said they wouldn't use the mover. So just as you may recall, the mover was one of the options that we had in place for the lack of running the bus down to catch the Career Center bus in Newfane, which was not running at the time. So just a little bit of information about the mover. I don't know, Bill, was there anything else to add about that transportation? We had a brief chat about it. I think that might have been it.
We had a meeting September 5th. Dwight didn't make it. He had something more important to do. But with the mover, and I asked Randy to call me right afterwards. And he said that they were going to run 2 buses from the west side that they do through the Marlboro route to get to Brattleboro, because they weren't sure what kind of numbers they were going to have. And in the past, we've had a lot of issues with overcrowding on that bus. And do you know how that's working, Matt? Are they having issues with that? Or a lot of people taking that bus now because you can't get to there from the east side?
Rich, I haven't heard, but I see Lori O'Hearn is on. She may have heard. Lori, if you're here, have you heard anything about the mover and the usage?
No, only that those families that responded to the survey have been using it. And, you know, Brattleboro is only operating 1 day a week for most students. So the ridership is not great right now. And I would also say that I did send those survey results to the mover, to Christine, so she would have them for their benefit.
Good. I guess that covers it. Does anybody else have any comments or thoughts on transportation? Looks like we're good, Matt. Nothing from the comment. Okay, Laura Sibilia, you're going to talk to us about the waiting study, and I'm really trying hard.
So I won't spend too much time on this. A couple of key things that I think are important to know as we continue to try and get some attention for this in the legislature. I am hearing a pretty unrelenting refrain that the correction of the weights, what that does for folks who maybe don't quite understand this, the correction of the weights for districts that are underweighted would allow more dollars to flow to that district. And so we have a pretty consistent refrain that I am hearing from House leadership, committee leaders, that they are very concerned that they don't really have the ability to make sure that those resources, if students were properly weighted, would go towards improving student outcomes. So they're very concerned that districts might use those additional resources to lower their taxes. So we do continue to tell and explain to folks that that is what is happening right now in districts that are overweighted, wealthy and large districts that don't need as high per pupil spending. We're continuing to make the case, but we're not getting very far there, and we are in the middle of an emergency session. So I'm not optimistic in this legislative session that we're going to get that. Another item with regard to the weighting study that has recently come to my attention is that there is a hesitancy to and I would almost say a refusal at this point is my understanding to address the ADM issue that we are seeing as a result of COVID. And what that means, we have a problem with our student counts, and in some places it may be fairly dramatic, with students either moving in, as we've seen in Dover, or in some places, we have a number of students that are being homeschooled, and it's unclear how to count those students. And so in order for boards to develop budgets, it's really important that they know what they're going to be looking at in terms of the number of students, because per pupil spending, of course, is how our tax rates are figured out. So, and as you all know, our student census, our student counts are taken in October. And so if the legislature were going to do anything to fix the ADM, the average daily membership, they would have to do it now for us to be able to plan our budgets more accurately, or with some sense of at least what the legislature's intention will be, so that when we come back in the legislature, it'll be January, right? So between now and January, we're going to have to develop budgets and then bring them to the voters. So not having clarity around how ADM is going to be handled is quite problematic. And the effects of COVID will have a 2-year, at this point, they'll have a 2-year impact, because our ADM ends up, when it's put with our equalized pupils, it's a 2-year weighted average that we see. So it does not appear that the legislature is going to take up the ADM issue. As I was listening to a joint hearing of the Ways and Means Committee and the Education Committee, I did hear the chair of the Ways and Means Committee explain that they were concerned about bringing forward any legislative solutions with regards to ADM, because they were concerned about amendments that might be brought forward to amend ADM. And so the weights, correcting weights, et cetera, would be something that would be germane to fixing ADM. So my guess is those two things may be related. And so we're working on communicating how critically important the ADM, getting the ADM fixed is. And then the last thing that I would say is that with the growing concern around the inequity, and the inequity that is growing due to COVID, and the inaction that appears may happen in this session to address that, we do have a number of legislators who were meeting prior to COVID, along with folks from around the state in the education community, and residents. And we have started reconnecting those folks together to start organizing an effort going into January. So no good news, a little bit of alarming news as far as I'm concerned. And there you have it. I don't know if Mark has anything else to add from VSBA.
Other than they too have hit a brick wall in regards to getting getting anything done about ADM during the session.
Are there any questions or comments for Laura? Or any thoughts on the waiting? Go ahead, Dwight.
Thanks, Rich. Thanks, Laura, for your work on that. It's I don't know. I'm not sure if that's good or bad news, but it sounds like we're kind of stuck waiting to see where we're going. And I'm a little concerned that you about what you're saying, that they're afraid that we're not going to spend the money the way we need to. I would assume it would be our decision as a board locally to determine where the money gets spent, but we can't spend anything we don't have. So I guess what I'm saying is, how hopeful are you that this will be taken back up in January, with the ADM issue and some other issues, that this will actually get brought up and something we can vote on?
Can I answer, Richard?
Yeah.
So I would say, I think you're right to be concerned about that. I'm sure that, Dover is, the town of Dover has been net sending about $11 million a year out of the town for the education of Vermont students. I would presume that the voters in Dover will probably also be concerned that there's no way of knowing if those dollars are being used to improve outcomes or lower taxes for students. In terms of hopefulness, in the next session, I'm a little bit flabbergasted that there's so much concern about the waiting study that it would appear that may be tied to an unwillingness to address ADM right now. So that actually gives me a little bit of hope. The number of districts and towns and sizes of districts that are engaged on this issue is pretty significant. So, and at the end of the day, people fight really hard when kids are not being treated well, which is where we're at. So I'm somewhat hopeful, also very frustrated.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dwight.
Thanks, Laura. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't want to speak for everyone, but I'm certainly frustrated too. Obviously, this is 20 years we've been fighting this fight, and I'm wondering at what point, do we take legal action? I know it's been discussed in the past, but maybe it's something we should start moving towards. We have the law on our side, we have the study on our side, and we have the Constitution on our side as well. So I'd like to see, kind of get a show of the board and where, if there's any, if anyone agrees that we should kind of move this in a legal direction.
Can I answer that, Laura?
Mr. Chair, you're running the meeting.
Well, you want to answer? You want me to?
I think the question is for you.
So, Dwight, the board cannot sue. The board is creation of the state, and we can't sue the state. That's why towns can't sue the state, because they're a creation of the state. You can't sue your creator. I guess you can't sue God either.
Okay.
But it has to be somebody who's harmed. And so a parent could say, my child isn't getting the education they should be getting because of this. And so the suit has to actually come from a person who's harmed. So there are people that are willing to help with that, to move that forward, but we actually need a person. And that's why, like the original decision, the Brigham decision, it wasn't a town or a suit, but the VSBA, and there's a bunch of different groups that helped support that lawsuit. But the suit was for this Amanda Brigham, whose mom was a school board member, and she's now a school board member somewhere so long ago. So that's why we can't do it as a group, but we can assist in that.
Okay. Even though we are being harmed as a school district.
Again, we're a creation of the state, so we can't sue the state as a school board.
Okay. Well, I'd be interested to know if there's any, yeah, okay. So then we have to wait for someone to come forward, or how would that work?
Well, we can look for people who would be a good candidate to be the face of the lawsuit.
Okay.
But I think that should be more of a discussion that we do an executive session, because it does involve legal, and you don't want to show all your cards.
Okay. I know that's been discussed in the past, so I just want to explore that a little bit more. Thank you, Rich.
So, Peter, can you just make a note that in one of the very soon future meetings, we should discuss legal options? Okay.
Will do.
We will do that when we get some more information together and have that for people. Okay.
Thank you, Rich.
Laura, you all good? Laura froze up. Hello, Laura. Everybody all good? Okay, we're gonna move along. Actually, Matt, this kind of works right into, for you and Tammy, the next topic, principals reports. And just while I've got the floor, can you guys just let us know? I know we were looking at thinking there's going to be a lot of new students, at least in the Dover building. But how did that actually pan out? And I'd be interested to know that in your report. And Tammy, if you saw any increase or decrease.
Sam, you want to go?
Sure, I can go. So we welcomed 37 in-person learners and 7 remote learners for a total of 44 students, which is about where we were, I think, at the end of last year. We have only officially had 2 full days of school and 1 remote day and 2 early release days. So things are really early on. But I can report that from my point of view and the teacher's point of view, that things are going really well and very smoothly. The students and the teachers are really happy to be back in the learning environment. We are, tweaking systems on a daily basis to make improvements, particularly in our drop-off and pickup protocols. And parents and students have been, I feel like, extremely patient, and I want to thank them for that. In-person instruction looks very different than it did when we left school in March, with all of the protective gear, the social distancing, and all the other protocols that have been put in place as a result of the recommendations from both the CDC and the AOE for a strong and healthy start. We are finding things like hand washing, bathroom routines are, taking a lot more time than we had planned and leaving less time for instruction. I would like to applaud the teachers and the rest of the staff, bus drivers, custodial, office staff, for all of the preparations that it took to make things go as smoothly as they have, for getting our students off to a great start. Just the details and all of the considerations that everyone thought of as far as making schedules, planning for activities, coordinating use of spaces, just truly an amazing orchestration, I would say. And I feel like we're really lucky to have such dedicated professionals working in our district. So that's what I've got.
Matt, or any questions for Tammy before we get to Matt? Matt.
All right.
Sure.
That was fantastic, Tammy. I would not add anything to that. Well, I'm going to add a few things, but it was really a great representation of how things are going at Dover as well. I think everything you said is spot on. Every day it gets a little better because people are looking at systems and reimagining them and correcting them and coming up with new creative ideas to solve problems. So I really appreciate that. The staff has been fantastic. Teaching staff primarily focusing on relationship building and helping kids transition back to school from 5.5 months or so of being away from school, and the routines and just engaging their brains differently. The other piece is trying to keep up with the school supported home study students. Realistically, that is another school that's running simultaneously with the in-person school. So the concept of having these 2 schools running with the same staff is a little daunting. I think we all would like to be doing, our very best for our at-home learners, and maybe are feeling like we're coming up a little short with what we can offer them. But I think the staff is doing a fantastic job with trying to integrate them into the daily work as much as possible. And I do hope that will get easier as the school routines get easier, and that the remote learners become a little bit more independent as they go as well. So it's a real 2-way street there. The heavy lifting has certainly been done by the custodial staff, the food service, and Lori O'Hearn in the office. The office has been literally wild the last few days, just with trying to manage all the little problems that come up, deal with all the little issues, all the communication with families, parents, busing, transportation, resources, all that stuff. It's really amazing to see it all work, and I'm very thankful to have an amazing staff to work with. So, yeah, that's all.
Hey, Matt, can you just talk about, we were talking 20 to 30 new students. How many actually made it to innings?
Yeah, it looks like our numbers are settling in at around 72 in person and 41 remote or school supported home study. So it's a little larger percentage than we originally thought. Lori would probably have, maybe even have some more recent numbers in her head if she wants to chime in, but it's right around 70 and 40.
Those numbers are right.
Thanks, Lori. I got them from Lori.
Thank you, Lori. Hey, Matt, what were your numbers last year?
We had no remote learners last year. No. The end of the year last year, we ended with 96 students on the roster.
So is there any other questions for Matt or Lori? We didn't get to ask Jennifer any questions. I'm sorry.
Rich, I have a question.
I think we need better internet first.
Rich is very still. Very, very quiet.
Can I speak? I don't know what's happening.
Oh, Rich is frozen.
I'm back. The host muted everybody.
Rich, can I ask a question? You're muted.
So where are we at hybrid meetings when I took my little hiatus here?
Laura has a question.
Okay, go ahead, Laura, wherever you are.
I've shut my camera off because my internet connection is also unstable. I just had a question for Tammy and Matt. If there's any new information that you think the board should have related to in-person learning.
I don't have anything to add, Laura, at this point, I don't think.
Nothing that I didn't include in my synopsis.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so I think we're back to hybrid meetings. Matt, is there any other discussion or any chat there that we need to take care of? Okay, so hybrid meetings, at the end of last meeting, I believe, we talked about maybe trying to do some hybrid meetings, and it was discussed that it wasn't something that we could just do fairly quickly. I know Mark put together a kind of an outline, what he thought would be needed to do hybrid meetings. I know that we are still, the town is still doing some hybrid meetings. I don't know, I've heard good and bad about that. I don't know how well that's all going. Mark, you want to just talk briefly about the proposal you put out? I believe it went to all the board members.
Sure, yeah. Emailed to everybody with that. Let me just say, I think Shannon's here. The town doesn't look like they're going to be making any major investment at this point. As from my perspective, there are two issues with the way they're doing things. One, the board is not on camera. So if you are not in the room, you can't see any board members. And the other problem is it's really difficult to hear anybody who is in the room when you are remote. What I put together was just a basically some hardware that we could use. I put together what I thought were 6 basic needs, and Rich, if it's okay with you, I'm just going to read from part of my email. All right. So the basic needs that I defined were members of the public, on-site and remote, must be able to see all members of the board. 2, members of the public on-site must be able to see members of the public who are remote. 3, members of the public who are remote must be able to see members of the public who are on-site. 4, all board members and members of the public must be able to hear each other. 5, all board members and members of the public must be able to speak. And 6, if documents need to be displayed, they must be viewable by those on-site and remote. So my proposal includes a rough estimate of about $1,500 of equipment. It would be a camera, which is about 180-degree view. So it could be set up on a tripod to get a good portion of the room. Most importantly, get all the board members, even if we are sitting at social distance. That camera is roughly $600. A tripod for that would be about $50. We would need something to display the remote, those on the remote session, so in Zoom, and any documents on screen in the physical location. So either a projector, which I thought we might be able to borrow from the school, and a 100-inch portable projection screen would run us somewhere between $50 and $100. Another option would be a inexpensive, 55-inch TV, although it would be a pain to move around. We'd have a laptop with a webcam that would be facing the public, so that everybody who's in the room would be able to be seen. And then 2 speaker/mic devices, which actually will connect to each other. I don't know if you guys can hear me well now, but I'm using one of those devices, and it is about 8 feet away from me as I'm speaking. So I'm hoping that you guys can hear me relatively well. So if we had 2 of those, one would be for at the table with the board members, and one could be in the middle of the room. They're Bluetooth, so they don't require any wires. And that's about it. I did briefly speak to Rich, BCTV Rich, about whether or not BCTV would be able to, if they were in the room with us, be able to pipe what they are recording into a Zoom user. So if the room would show up as a, just one square in the Brady Bunch squares. And he's going to check on that for me to see whether that is possible. That would be one way that we could reduce some costs, namely the camera and maybe the speakers. If we want to move forward, I think we're probably looking at about a $1,500 investment. Everything would be portable, so it could go back and forth between Dover and Wardsboro. Obviously, we have to have an adequate internet access in order for it to work. I know Dover has upgraded their service at Town Hall, and I don't know about service in Wardsboro. So, any questions?
Yeah, hang on a second, Mark. Shannon Wheeler, and then Laura. Oh, Shannon, you don't want to say anything now, or do you?
No, I was just letting Mark know that I was here, and the town has upgraded their speed. Tabby continues to work on the sites of back and forth. So some of you have attended select board meetings, and that's the challenge right now, is not being able to see and hear everyone. So what Mark has reported is firsthand from attending those hybrid meetings.
Okay. Laura, you had your hand up? No? Okay. Is anybody else? We all set? So, okay, go ahead, Mark.
I just want to make one, it's more of a policy thought. I think that moving forward, both during COVID and beyond, I think hybrid meetings are what we need to do. I think we see, I mean, we've had as many as 29 participants today, whereas, you know, in person we'll have maybe 1 or 2 people, besides board members, obviously. So I just think that we should look at this as a long-term problem with solutions versus just a COVID thing. Just my personal thinking on it.
So unless somebody has a different thought, you know, we discussed it last meeting, the motion didn't carry. Mark did do some more research for us. And I think, like Shannon was saying, let's let the select board get it straight. And if it works good for the select board, then maybe we can try piggybacking onto that. But I do know a lot of the board members, and I think the administration, this is a lot easier for Bill and Matt and Tammy, you know, to do these kind of meetings too with us. And I think we're getting a lot of stuff done. We are getting good participation. It may not be the most convenient thing, but I tell you, this meeting's been a lot easier because I don't worry now. Matt's got it under control. You know, last meeting I was very concerned I was missing people, and it's worked out really well setting this up ahead of time and having people come off of audio or video when they want to speak. So I think we're getting everybody covered. So unless somebody would like to change that, I think we'll move along. We'll keep Mark's proposal there, and you know, we can reassess this in a couple months. Don't see anybody having any major problem with that. Okay, then let's go to this Title IX Model Policy C12 Action. Bill, I will let you discuss that.
Yeah, so a new federal law came into play on August 14th, and Vermont took that law and worked with their partners at Vermont School Boards Insurance Trust and have created a model policy for school districts so that we can comply with the law. So this law is already on the books, it's already in place. I'm bringing this policy to all the boards in the month of September. So it is my recommendation that you warn this policy so that it can be warned for, it'll have to be 10 days, so it won't be your next meeting, it'll be your first meeting in October. But we're operating under this law. We're going to follow what the policy says. It is similar to the hazing, harassment, and bullying law that happened about 3-4 years ago, and where there's really no choice but to follow exactly what it says. So my recommendation is that the board warns this policy.
So to warn the policy, I need somebody to make a motion to warn policy IX, Title IX Model Policy C12.
I'll move that we warn C12 policy C12 prevention of sexual harassment as prohibited by Title IX.
Thank you, Mark.
So the chair will recognize that Mark made a motion to move policy C12 to be posted and warned. Do I have a second to that motion?
I'll second. It's
I
Rick.
second.
Okay, Rick was a little quicker with the thing, so the chair will recognize, I know, I'm sorry. We'll recognize Rick made the second. So we have a motion on the floor and a second. Is there any discussion? Mark, you get first discussion. if you'd like.
I had sort of a question for Bill, but I think he actually answered it. I wasn't sure whether C12 would supersede C10, which is the harassment and bullying, but it sounds like that's a separate law, so okay.
Rick, you got any questions, comments? Kate, since you tried hard, I'll give you the second discussion point then.
No comments.
Okay. Bill, we do have a sexual harassment policy though in place now. So does that supersede that one?
The state level, this is federal and it's new.
So the state one will stay too, so we'll have 2 sexual harassment policies.
Until we get clarification from VSBA, we're keeping them both on the books.
Okay. Any other discussion from anybody? Matt, we ready to rock and roll? Okay, if you're all ready to vote, all those in favor, please signify so by saying aye.
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 Sounds like it's a unanimous vote. The vote is unanimous. The ayes have it. So Bill, that'll be warned. So Matt and Tammy, wherever Tammy went, you guys need to just make sure it gets posted in all the usual places. Okay. Review of board member roles and responsibilities. I asked that this to go on. I'm going to take about 5 minutes of your time, and that's it. But I wanted to just bring a few things up. Some of them we discussed early in the meeting about Matt helping us with keeping track of people who want to speak, so we make sure everybody wants to get heard. Remember, unless you're recognized by the board chair, you can do anything you want. You can jump up and down, you can make motions, you can make votes, but unless the board chair actually says, I recognize, Mark, and you have the floor, that's the only time you get to make a motion, is when you've been recognized and make a motion. The other thing, the same thing with the second, a motion isn't made until a motion's been made and seconded. And it's a little more difficult with us being in remote land here. So I am trying not to be as strict, but we can be as strict as you guys want or as loose as you guys want. And Kate, I felt really bad last time. I felt like I really stuck you on the spot when I said, Kate, what do you think? I made a ruling. Mark is asking that he thinks my ruling's wrong. And, it wasn't that you got to decide, but the board gets to decide. It's actually the board's meeting. So if you think I'm doing something wrong as a chairman, you can call me out on it and we can have a discussion and the board gets to decide whether I'm right or wrong. I think Rick is smiling because he's probably had that happen a few times to him too. It's just like when we do the have town meeting and stuff. It's the assembly that gets to decide. The moderator gets to make a ruling, but the voters can out or overrule the moderator. So, Mark did the right thing. Mark was concerned about something, so he asked for a point of order, which stops all discussion, and the point of order has to be addressed. So that was a correct move. And technically, if there's a motion on the floor, I question, and I was looking at my notes, and I still don't know if I had actually recognized that. But, again, just give me a little leeway here because these are strange times. And how many people would have thought that I'd be on a computer, trying to run a meeting? So it's definitely been interesting. One other thing I wanted to let you guys know, and I've been trying to do this, and you may have noticed it, and I don't think I ever mentioned it. Because we're doing these votes, and you have to unmute yourself. I think I hear everybody, and I try to look to see that the little yellow box lights up around you when you're off a mute. That's why I say it appears as though the ayes have it, or it looks like the vote's in the affirmative. And I give a little bit of a pause because if somebody voted differently or somebody doesn't think it is, that's the time to weigh in and let me know that, no, I don't think so. And then we can do a roll call vote. Does that make sense to everybody on the board? Okay, and remember, I want to try to make this as easy as we can. That was the only thing I really had on the rolls during these meetings. But I did want to bring one other thing up. And recently, it's not only been tough on us, but it's been tough on a lot of the parents trying to figure out how to navigate this because it is strange times. And we do have a few new board members. So I asked Bill to send out a policy that we adopted, and it's policy number, bear with me. It's policy B22 and B22A, public complaints about personnel. So I told Bill about a thing we did at Riverbend Inn years and years ago when I was first chairman of Wyndham Central the first time. And we did a little skit with the VSBA about this gentleman walks up to a school board member and says to the school board member, hey, you know, the coach took my son out, wouldn't let him play the second half of the basketball game Friday night. And, you know, they lost. And if my son had been in there, we'd have won. You need to do something about that. And then the person playing the board member got to go, oh, you're so right. I'm going to go see that coach right now. And then, you know, the board member goes into the coach's office and says, hey, if you don't want trouble, you better make sure that little Johnny plays all the game from now on. That's the only way we're going to win. And the coach starts to tell him that little Johnny had an attitude and he was having some trouble with classes, and the principal decided he didn't get to play the whole game. And, you know, the board member goes into the principal and tells him he was wrong, and if he doesn't do something, his job's going to be at stake. And then the superintendent got followed up by that. And, you know, I hope everybody here knows that that's not what we do as school board members. But it has happened in the past, and it was actually based on a true story, and it wasn't that old either. So if somebody comes up to you and has a problem with an employee in the school, be it a staff member, be it the janitor, be it a part-time person that works there, remember, we don't want to hear it, because then if we hear it and they tell us about it, then what happens is we're not allowed to act on behalf as a semi-judicial person when that meeting, you know, if the people appeal whatever happens, or if the superintendent or the principal decides to discipline the person, they fight it, it actually lets them jump up a level to go to a grievance position. So if anybody has a problem with what somebody does, an employee, be it, you know, an administrator, be it anybody in the building, you know, you need to let them know. The parent needs to talk to that person first. So if your complaint is about the coach, they should talk to the coach. And if they don't like the response the coach gives them, then they can go talk to the principal, and then they can go talk to the superintendent if they don't like that. And then if they still don't like the response, then they get to come to the board. And the reason we don't want to hear about it ahead of time, because if it's the parent told you this whole story and Bill says, look, I made this decision, the parent's unhappy, we're going to have a hearing, you're not allowed to participate in the hearing, because you're supposed to base your decision in the hearing on the information received at the hearing. And if you've already talked to the parent and tried to talk to Bill and Matt and Tammy and the coach about it, you're not going to be allowed to make that decision, because you shouldn't be in that. And we would hope that you would abstain. So I just wanted to make sure we review that. You know, a lot of times people think because we're on the school board, we actually we get to run something. But again, you know, the school board hires an administrator through the superintendent, and we task them with running the school. And then if there's issues, you know, we have a form we have to go through, or we have a process we have to go through. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. Does that make sense, everybody? Does anybody have any questions, thoughts, or comments? Rick, you're good. Mark, Dwight, you good? Kate? And Laura, I don't see you, but you will chime in, I'm sure, if you had an issue. Bill, Matt, or Tammy, do you want to, you know, thank you, Laura. Do you guys want to add anything to that, or are we all good? Ready to move on? Okay, thank you, everybody, on that. And I'm sorry, I just want to bring that up because it is different times we live in. Bill asked to put this on creation of a policy subcommittee. Bill, I'm going to turn it over to you, sir.
Yeah, so it's amazing to think about this, but we're now going into year 3 of the creation of the River Valley's board. And before you guys organized, you went through meticulously all the policies from both Wardsboro and Dover. And those are now dated 2017. And so I have gone to the West River, and I'm going to you guys, saying that I think it would be a good idea to create a policy subcommittee that on a regular basis in between meetings meets and reviews those policies that are the oldest. It may simply be a review. It may be that there is something you want to talk about, but just on an ongoing basis so that you can bring forward 2 or 3 policies to the full board each meeting. It just gives us an opportunity to make sure that we're systematically reflecting on what policies exist and making sure that nothing gets out of date. So I spoke to West River about this at the beginning of the month. They've created a policy subcommittee that started actually at the end of August, and it's actually worked quite smoothly because then the board gets a recommendation from the policy committee, but the board ultimately makes the decision. So it keeps things moving in a very systematic way. And so I asked Rich if we could put this on the agenda for you as a board to consider this as an opportunity. The model that they have is they just have 2 or 3 interested board members, and then they invite a administrator. And it's usually 1 hour in between meetings.
So, Bill, how many policies does West River have compared to us, and how many of them are specific?
You guys, I mean, you're all within about 5 policies of each other. It's depending on if you created something that you kept independent. But you're all working off the same model policies. You just tweak them a little bit to fit your particular circumstance.
Okay, and we are all good with our required policies, because I believe we did that with the first group even before we operated the school.
Exactly. It's making sure that you have that and doing that in a systematic way. But I have not reviewed all your policies in the last year simply because of the way the world has been working. And I just think it would be nice to have a systematic way to make sure that that happens. Because if you don't have one, or if you have one that's old, it would be nice to make sure that you're systematically viewing it.
Just to give a little content to everybody, and Rick, I think, can weigh in on this, and I'll get to you, Mark, is that, you know, we actually, when I first got on the board, I remember Brookline, one of the guys there on the school board over there, Tom Stats, was like, he asked about a policy, and the principal went and found an old box and found some policies that were like 20 years old. And, you know, that's one of the most important things that a school board does is we create policy that allows our administrators to run our building or run our program. I know in Dover, and I believe, Rick, you can chime in if I'm wrong, but I think Dover and Wardsboro have had a real less is more. And we do, because policies are fairly restrictive. The policy, either you can or you can't do something. So we've also done a lot with administrative procedures, which allow the administrator a little bit more leeway. So if it's a required policy, we've done it. If not, we've made it an administrative procedure. And then some policies are required at the SU level. So I don't think it would be bad, because it's good to try to review. In Dover, before we became the combined board, we were trying to get every policy within every 3 years. Some are a little bit more. I believe Wardsboro was trying to do the same thing, because your policies are pretty up to date. So I think it's a really good idea to move this forward. And it also, we don't have to spend a lot of time, but if the board kind of makes a recommendation to a policy and you read it ahead of time, then it'll be a lot quicker and we can vote on it. So is there any thoughts on it? Anybody else want to weigh in? Mark, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say there actually are 2 policies that are required that we don't have. I went through all of our policies over the last few days, thanks to Matt's spreadsheet from Dover, which I updated for us. So there are a couple of required policies that we don't have, which the policy committee could obviously work through.
So you're in favor of it?
Yes, I think it's a good idea.
Okay. Anybody else? I don't hear anybody opposed, so I would say yes, Bill. I don't believe we need to make a motion to do that. Laura's giving me a big thumbs up. So I think we can just form a policy subcommittee by voting a couple members. I think probably for us, Bill, 2 would be plenty, wouldn't it?
2 would be ideal.
Okay. Somebody like to make a motion?
What's the motion? Is it to create this subcommittee or just whom to appoint?
Let's do it both in one motion and save ourselves a little time. I don't usually do this, Peter, but I'm going to recognize myself and make a motion to appoint a subcommittee for policy review and recommendation. And I'm going to recommend that Kate and Mark be on that committee. Anybody like to second that? Laura, you second that, Laura?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. I'll give up my spot to talk. Laura, you want to talk? Are you all good?
I'm good. Hopefully they're willing. Maybe they're not.
Kate's throwing some really darts with her eyes, so I don't know. Go ahead, Dwight, and then Rick.
No, I'm good. I like your motion.
Rick?
I was just going to ask if we could read it back, the motion.
Peter, can you read it back, please?
How about this? Mr. Werner moved to appoint a policy subcommittee consisting of Ms. Rideout and Mr. Schauber.
And Laura seconded the motion.
Yes.
You all set, Rick?
Do we need to create and promote it or just create?
I think we created and appointed it both.
We just appointed?
Just appointed it.
No, we have to create it to appoint somebody to it.
Okay, so I'll say create and appoint.
Thank you. Thank you for amending Rich's motion without an amendment.
That's what I thought I made, but Rich will have to check the tape.
I think he did say create in there.
Laura, you
so
good
too.
with that?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify so by saying aye.
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 It appears as though the ayes have it. The ayes have it. So congratulations, Mark and Kate. You just got a new committee.
Mark and Kate, I'll email you separately about how to get it going.
And oh, do we have to get, I mean, I would think Matt and Tammy would kind of be ex officio members, right, along with you?
Yeah, but they don't need all 3 of us. So I'll talk with Matt and Tammy about how we can support that group.
I think you lost, Bill. You weren't doing anything. They covered you and cut you and did everything.
Yeah, we'll be rotating. I can tell you that.
Okay, thank you, guys. Bill, nothing for executive session, right? Okay, so for our next meeting, we've got a few things going on. September 21st, we have to have a hearing. Yes.
We have the VSBA.
No, I got that in the next meeting, so hang tight. Don't go.
Okay.
Talk about the September 21st board hearing.
So this is a great example of where you're not going to know anything other than you're going to come to the board hearing at 5 o'clock and you're going to hear in your quasi-judicial role a appeal of which the board will hear from the administration and then they will hear from the appellant and the board will have to decide to either uphold the decision of the administration or to not uphold the decision of the administration, or to have another hearing where they request more time or information. And then that has to be done in writing by the clerk to the appellant.
And I forgot, who's our clerk? Is it Dwight or Kate?
I think it's me.
I think it's Dwight.
So Dwight, this is going to be really important because this is going to be timely. So you're going to have to make sure you're both there and then get the letter out or get the information out. Because we have a period of time to do it in too. So Bill, is are we gonna do that online and then but it'll just be this group?
I'm going to set up 2 separate meetings. One meeting is just going to be for the 5 o'clock hearing, and then I'll set up a 6 o'clock one that will be the public hearing.
Okay, and then how does Peter get the information for the minutes, or you do
So
that?
Dwight, as the clerk, will take some very generic minutes. I mean, it's going to be, we're going into executive session. We're going to leave executive session. We're going to direct the clerk to create a letter based on the board's determination. So it'll be very light in minutes because it'll all be in deliberative session. And Peter will be at the 6 o'clock public meeting.
Okay, everybody good with that? So we make sure we have that. And then there's going to be a couple WCSU meetings coming up, which we haven't put on this form yet, and I don't know if all the dates are set. We want to have one meeting. So Mark is part of the VSBA, and there are some policy, they make recommendations. People are allowed to give thoughts that they have for the status or what VSBA is going to argue for resolutions. And usually in the past, Laura's been on that, myself, Emily, there's been several of us, and they usually try to get the input from WCSU as to what the recommendations, what the proposals are, resolutions, and then, does the board think we should vote for them or against them? Unfortunately, the VSBA representation is on a district level, not on an individual board level, but we do get to give our opinion. So before the next meeting, Mark will through Bill and Matt or Tammy will get out all the resolutions. So just take a look at them, and we'll have under new business, Peter, at the next meeting, we'll have the resolutions, and just give Mark some thought, or we can discuss them amongst ourselves to make a recommendation for your WCSU reps, which are myself, Mark, and I forget who the third one is, Bill. Rick Thorpe. We can take that to the WCSU. And I think, Bill, we're trying to do a WCSU meeting in the beginning of October because the meeting where they're going to vote on the resolutions is the middle to the end of October.
Yeah, I believe it's the 22nd for the VSBA meeting. Mark can correct me.
29th
Okay.
October.
29th. So
Okay.
the October 13th, Tuesday, October 13th, 1 hour meeting, 6:30 to 7:30. I'll put it on the next agenda.
So Rick,
And October.
and if you can't, let me know so we can get somebody to replace you. And then October something 30th, don't we have October 28th, we have compensation.
The 28th is the compensation and budget.
So again, Rick, if you can't make those, or Mark, let me know so we can get another representative. And then we have September 21st at 6, we have a regular board meeting. Is there any other thoughts? Matt, anybody got a question? Oh, Mark's got his hand up.
Just because I don't have a calendar in front of me, October 13th and 28th, do you know what days of the week those are?
Tuesday and Wednesday.
We try to have all WCSU meetings on a Wednesday because that's usually a good night. There's no board meetings, but we have a couple other conflicts with some other different things going on.
So the October 13th is a Tuesday?
Yeah, so if you can't make that, just let us know next meeting. We'll get somebody else in your stead.
Okay.
So Matt, you said it was thumbs up? We're all good? Nothing. And I don't see your keyboard, so you're not going to be able to play us off the air this time, but I'm really disappointed. So maybe Tammy, next time it's your turn, you have to play us some music or sing or something. So I would like to recognize somebody who'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Hold on.
Yes, Mark.
I still want to give a couple pieces of information on the VSBA.
Oh, I did have that in a new business. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I messed up.
Okay. There are two upcoming meetings for the VSBA. October 6th at 5 p.m. is a regional meeting. It's a meeting with Windsor and Wyndham, where the two counties will be electing their representation to the VSBA. So hopefully you all can make that. You can register for that on the VSBA website. If you go to the events tab, there's a regional meeting option in that tab. And then the annual business meeting, which the resolutions will be voted on, is October 29th at 5 p.m. That you can register on the front page of the VSBA. And there's also a link on the front page of the VSBA to the resolutions, should you want to read them. That's it.
For some reason, Mark, I wrote VSBA for Mark, and then I just talked about the WCSU, and I thought that's what it was. So sorry about that.
And you took part of it.
Anybody else? Everybody good? Somebody want to get recognized to make the biggest motion in the night?
I move that we adjourn at 7:33 p.m. on 9/14/2020.
Second that, Dwight?
A second.
Okay, guys, all in favor? Aye.
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 Bye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Everybody. Good meeting.
Thanks, Richard.
Thank you.